Wicked and Furious clips.
So the impacts of another great psychedelic and point of discussion that a lot of people like talking about is dimethyltryptamine. Have you done much study or research into that?
Absolutely, and there was some element of DMT that was my interest in DMT was kind of happening on the side before I even had gone to the EGA conference. I had a friend that grew up with surfing. Things had broken down in our friendship relationship due to just like it was over $100 or something. It was to do with something to do with drugs back when I was 19, 20. Our relationship sort of fell apart. We reconnected again once I'd been studying. I was doing my PhD at the time. And we'd reconnected, and one day he said, so you're teaching these students about drugs? You teach them about DMT? And I said, no, what's DMT? And he went on to sort of describe what it was and how to extract it and everything else. And I think I felt a number of feelings. One, I was annoyed that I was meant to be a drug expert and I'd never come across it.
Idea what it was.
No, and so I made sure from there on in, every one of my students was going to know what DMT is. It's in all of my lectures now. And the other was, I guess, a sense of cautious anxiety around having a DMT experience, because doing my PhD, I'd kind of just sorted out my ontology in terms of what's reality and what's not reality, and I didn't think DMT was a really good idea in terms of challenging something that I just kind of firmed up and was writing my PhD on at the time.
Yeah, wow, okay. So is it, I'm not sure if this is true, but the way that the brain works when you go into REM sleep and you produce, I'm not sure what the chemicals are in the brain that puts you into that sort of hallucinogenic state when you sleep. Does DMT get produced by the brain when you sleep?
We don't know.
Don't know? Okay.
There's a lot of theories. We just don't know why. We don't know why the brain produces DMT. We don't know, and even that's speculative in terms of whether the brain's producing it or not. The more interesting question is, where can't you find DMT? Because it's in grass, it's in food, we're eating it. There's monoamine oxidase enzymes that break it down, because otherwise we'd be tripping all the time. So it's hard to know whether the DMT that's in our brain is being produced by our brain or it's coming at us through the plants and animals that we consume. So we don't know. We really don't know a lot about DMT. What we do know is the way it works in terms of its subjective effect is the same as LSD, mescaline and psilocybin in that it binds to that 5-HT2A receptor site.
Wow, okay. So you touched on your PhD just before, and if I've done my research correctly, that was on the media's interpretation of and narrative surrounding psychedelic drugs. Is that correct?
Not so much psychedelics, but just
drugs
alcohol and other drugs in general, because I guess I was looking at it, I was seeing that the media were presenting a particular picture of alcohol and other drugs, and that didn't seem to fit with the science. And so I wanted to understand why the media was limited to framing the stories the way they did, the way the narrative seemed to always be the same. And so my PhD basically showed that they were limited by these discourses that were that it's a complex concept. That the easiest way I can explain it is that there are institutions within our society that have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo because that maintains their power in society. So medical institutions, so they're going
Big
to
pharma, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, they all fit within that medical discourse, and so they present drugs as pathogens. And if you're exposed to that pathogen, then you may cause harm, or you develop the disease of addiction. There are other institutions like the church, which sees it as a moral failing, for example, and there's stories of redemption in the media, where people redeem themselves from drug use, or even where the drugs themselves are deemed to have some sort of agency. And I see this with methamphetamine, where people think methamphetamine is just a
drug.
molecule.
Yeah,
it's just a
drug.
chemical. It's what the person does with that molecule that leads or to harm or not harm. And so,
so meth essentially just has like a marketing problem.
well, look, I try not to be druggist.
Yeah.
But there's two drugs that I don't like just because of the impact that it has on people's health, and that's alcohol, tobacco, and third one would be meth.
Meth, okay, wow.
Thanks for tuning in to another Naked and Furious clip. Please remember to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our new podcasts.